Here you can see the former Grafeneck murder location where the National Socialist regime took those lives that it considered to be unworthy of life. Prior to the war, it had been a hospital, but on the 13th of October 1939, Richard Alber, district administrator of the Münsingen district, ordered the patients to be taken out within 24 hours. The following day, the property was confiscated for the purposes of the Reich. Over the next 3 months, it was transformed into a murder institution. The first killing took place on the 18th of January 1940. The means of murder was carbon monoxide in a gas chamber disguised as a shower room located in a building that looked like a garage. The gas came from the IG Farben industry plant in Ludwigshafen, which is today BASF. The first victims came from the Egelfing Haar Sanatorium and Nursing Home. Over the next 11 months, patients from 48 hospitals for the disabled and mentally ill were killed here, a total of at least 9,839 people. The last victims were murdered here on the 13th of December 1940. This location closed, but another at Hadamar was opened in its place. In this video, I'm going to discuss one of the killers, Dr. Ernst Baumhard. Here, I shall describe his life and show you the places where the killings happened as they are today. Ernst Baumhard was a doctor whose career was almost entirely devoted not to healing the sick, but to killing them. He was born on the 3rd of March 1911 in Ammendorf, near Halle Saal, which you can see here. His father was a doctor and he followed in his father's footsteps, studying medicine at Halle. Whilst at university, he joined the National Socialist German Student League. He applied for membership in the National Socialist German Workers' Party on the 10th of June 1937 and was accepted retroactively as from the 1st of May 1937. Membership number 5069270. In 1938, he took over the leadership of the Medical Student Council of the Nazi student leadership at the University of Halle. As a member of the SA, he attended the SA Higher Educational School in Sandersleben. As one of the first winners of the Reichsberufswettkampf, a national vocational competition, Baumhard was personally presented to Hitler on the 1st of May 1938. Just before the war broke out in 1939, Baumhard received his license to practice medicine, and he received his doctorate in medicine after defending his dissertation, The Effects of Straw Dust on the Human Organism and Measures to Prevent Damage Caused by It, results of investigations from the Kröllwitz paper factory. The subject of his dissertation suggests that he could have headed into a career in preventative medicine and performed a useful service for humankind. However, it went in a totally different direction. In mid-October, Adolf Hitler presented Philipp Buhler with a letter backdated to the 1st September in which instructions were given to launch what was to become known as the Euthanasia program. It was not euthanasia, but murder. This program provided a list of expert doctors who were to decide who was to live and who was to die. The young Dr. Ernst Baumhard was placed on this list. The reason can only be that he was considered a staunch National Socialist who must have shown some zeal for the policy of killing the sick. Baumgart was listed under the heading Doctors in the Institutions as a member of the T4 organization as from the 1st of November 1939. The first murder of a life considered not worthy of life had already taken place a few months earlier. It may be worth looking at the circumstances of how this policy came about. The National Socialist idea of euthanasia developed from an idea which might be called the right to die. That is what we would call euthanasia today. If a person has a terminal disease and is suffering, should that person have the right to end that suffering? However, the Nazis expanded this from a mercy death to the destruction of life unworthy of life. And of course it was them who would decide whose life was unworthy of living. This idea in itself comes from eugenicists in the 19th century, above all in the United States and in Germany. So it came about long before the National Socialists actually came to power in Germany. Shortly after the seizure of power, or should I say the granting of power to the National Socialists in 1933, a law was passed which forced people who had hereditary diseases to be sterilized. According to Hitler's doctor, Karl Brandt, and Hans Lammers, who was the civil servant responsible for the Reich Chancellery, Hitler had wanted as early as 1933 to kill the incurably ill, but he recognized that public opinion would not accept this. It needs to be made clear that Hitler did actually react to public opinion. He would it was a push-pull sometimes. When they saw there was a lot of opposition, they would then stop doing whatever it was that they were doing and have a go sometime later. In 1935, Hitler told Gerhard Wagner, who was then the head of the Reich Doctors Association, that the question could not be taken up in peacetime. Such a problem could be more smoothly and easily carried out in war, Hitler told Wagner. And Hitler also added that he intended to radically solve the problem of the mental asylums in such an event. Wagner didn't live to see the beginning of the killings of the sick, or even the war for that matter, as he died of cancer aged 50 in 1939. He was succeeded by Dr. Leonardo Conti. One thing, however, this does show is that Hitler was quite open about planning a war as early as 1935. Richard Kreigsmarine was a farm labourer married to Lina Kreigsmarine. He lived in the village of Pomsen, which is to the southeast of Leipzig. They were ardent Nazis. A son was born to them in 1939. The son, Gerhard, was born blind. He either had no legs or just one leg, or maybe he had one arm. The original medical records have been lost. It's not clear, and the second-hand accounts vary. Gerhard also suffered from convulsions. Richard Kreigsmarine took the newborn Gerhard to Dr. Werner Kattel, a paediatrician at the University Children's Clinic in Leipzig, and asked that his son be put to sleep. Kattel told him that that would be illegal. However, it was probably him who came up with the solution. In 1924, Kattel met Alfred Hoscher in Innsbruck, a psychiatrist who, together with the lawyer Karl Binding, wrote a book on the destruction of life unworthy of life. This book may well have influenced Kattel's thinking. In 1933, Kattel joined the National Socialist Medical Association and the National Socialist Party in 1937. Kreigsmarine wrote directly to Hitler, either at the suggestion of his own brother, or perhaps it was from Kattel himself. Thus, Kattel provided the solution. Kreigsmarine referred to his child as a monster and asked for his child to be put to sleep. Obviously, Hitler didn't read his own mail, but it was given to Hans Heffelmann, head of Department 2B, which dealt with requests. Heffelmann and Philipp Wöhler, who was then head of the Chancellery, showed the letter to Hitler, aware of his frequently expressed support for the mercy killing of people with severe disabilities. Hitler sent his doctor Karl Brandt to Leipzig to investigate, with instructions that if the condition of the child was as bad as the father had written, then the child could be killed. Kattel said that there was no chance of improvement ever. Somehow, I don't understand how, Kattel appears to have been given legal immunity, although of course by this stage of the National Socialist regime it would have taken a very brave prosecutor to initiate proceedings. I presume that Kattel had some kind of document maybe from Hitler or from Brandt, which said that he would not be held legally responsible. Of course, if this came to trial, this document would have been absolutely worthless. The Pomsen Church Register says that Gerhard Kretschmer died at Pomsen of heart weakness on the 25th of July 1939. Presumably, the child was killed with an injection, either by Cattell, although I accept it might have been Brandt, and, of course, there was no legal fallout. On the 18th of August 1939, either Brandt or Buller started a register of children with such health problems, which was formalised by Hitler in October 1939, but backdated to the 1st of September 1939, the day the war broke out. The theory here was that in times of war, feeding such people was a luxury the state could not afford. The program was called T4, named after Tiergartenstrasse 4 in Berlin, where the head office was located. In January 1940, Ernst Baumhard, alongside other especially chosen T4 doctors, participated in the first test gassing of patients in the old Brandenburg penitentiary. It needs to be pointed out that whereas this was the first test gassing within the borders of pre-war Germany, Gassings had already started at Fort 7 in Poznan in occupied Poland. At this test gassing in Brandenburg, Baumhard was in the company, amongst others, of Karl Brandt, who was Hitler's doctor, Philipp Buller, head of the Führer Chancellery, and Leonardo Conti, the State Secretary for Health in the Reich Ministry of the Interior. August Becker, later to be inspector for the use of gas fans in places such as the death camp at Helmlo nad Nerum and in the occupied Soviet Union, was almost certainly present too. Another attendee was Werner Haider, a clinical director and professor of psychiatry and neurology at the University of Würzburg. He was the head of the medical department of the T4 Central Office. Irmfried Ebel, future commandant at Treblinka, also witnessed the experiment. SS Sturmbannführer Albert Widmann, a chemist who was also an officer in the Security Police's Forensic Institute, gave the instructions to the doctors who would kill the patients. The effect and duration of the gassing process could be observed through a peephole in the gas chamber door. Shortly afterwards, Baumhard was appointed deputy gassing doctor at the Nazi killing centre in Grafeneck. He was deputy to Horst Schumann, who was later to be a doctor at Auschwitz. I've done a two-part video on Schumann and his post-war fate. In April 1940, Baumhard succeeded Horst Schumann as head of the gassing centre. In correspondence, he used the codename Dr. Jäger, as the staff did not reveal their real names. From the 26th of February to the 4th of March 1940, Baumhard took part in what was later to be described as a selection. This was selecting who would live and who would die. This selection took place at the Bedburg-Hau Institution. The selection was made up of a pseudo-medical commission led by Werner Haider, the medical director of the T4 organization. He assisted, along with the director of the Brandenburg Killing Center, Irmfried Ebel, later commandant at Treblinka, and Friedrich Menneker, in the selection of the institution's patients. Approximately 350 to 400 patients were then transported by train to Grafeneck and gassed there. The obligation of secrecy was not always taken seriously at Grafeneck. Baumhard invited the director of the Wienerthal Sanatorium, senior medical officer Otto Gutterkunst, to visit Grafeneck on the occasion of the transport of his selected patients. Gutterkunst later testified, "I was naturally interested in learning what was going on there. I couldn't imagine how the killing of so many people was supposed to be carried out. I told him I would come. Dr. Baumhard showed me a barrack with beds that had probably never been used because they were all freshly made up. The gas chamber with its false shower, the crematorium ovens, and I also saw a large pile of ashes with bone fragments in an adjoining room. As I recall, an employee from Grafeneck was found just pounding in these bone fragments with a hammer. After my return, I told my pastor, Flashland in Winnenden, that if an urn from Grafeneck was to be buried, he should avoid saying that these ashes were those of the deceased. Baumhard also sent a similar invitation to the last gassing in December 1940 to Dr. Martha Fauser, the director of the Zwiefelten Sanatorium and Nursing Home, which was used as an interim institution where victims were housed before being taken to Grafeneck. On the 4th of June 1940, senior nurse Ernst Hadamar was shot dead under mysterious circumstances at Grafeneck. It's not clear how this happened. In the Grafeneck trial held after liberation of Germany, the following testimony by a witness was given. In the summer of 1940, I was in bed as a result of a concussion. On the 4th of June 1940, a transport arrived which included a leper whose face, according to the nurses, was already eaten away. The leper was immediately shot by Dr. Baumhard with a pistol to prevent the nurses from being infected. It would appear that the head nurse, Hagemeyer, from the Rhineland, jumped the wrong way and was fatally shot by the round. Dr. Baumhard, who told me about it himself, was very upset and beside himself. He wanted to take his own life. Grafeneck closed in December 1940 to be replaced by a new killing centre at Hadamar. Baumhard and his deputy Gunther Hennecke were transferred there. They arrived on or before the 13th of January 1941. Killings started here soon after their arrival. At Hadamar, Baumhard was known as Dr. Moos. Here we can see the gas chamber at Hadamar which has survived. Victims arrived at Hadamar usually via the grey buses of the Gekrat Front organisation. They disembarked in a wooden garage outside the hospital and from there entered the building via a short passageway. Once inside, they took off their clothes and were given an old military greatcoat or something similar to put over themselves. They were given a brief examination in order to determine what was to be the cause of their death, written on the death certificate. From there, they were led to the basement where they discarded their greatcoats and were taken to the gas chamber disguised as a shower. There, both doors were bolted and either Baumhard or Hennecke turned on the carbon monoxide to murder the victims. The rate of killing at Hadamar was even greater than that it had been at Grafeneck. During the spring and early summer of 1941, there were disagreements between the head of the T4 organisation, Victor Brack, and Baumhard. As a result, Baumhard felt that he could no longer carry on and resigned. He was replaced by the radiologist Friedrich Berner. The second gassing doctor at Hadamar, Günther Hennecke, also left with Baumhard. He was replaced by Dr. Hans Bodo Gorgas. There was of course a war going on, and doctors were in big demand. Baumhard and Hennecke both joined the Navy in the summer of 1941. According to the Hartheim statistics, 9,839 people were killed in Grafeneck in 1940 and 10,072 in Hadamar from January 1941 to the end of August 1941. During the period in which Baumhard was at Hadamar, 6,262 victims were killed. On the 25th of August 1941, Baumhard joined the Navy as a naval doctor. He was to serve on U-boats. U-449 was a new submarine just delivered from the manufacturer in Elbląg, today Elbląg in Poland. It left Kiel on the 1st of June 1943. Its intended area of operations was the North Atlantic. 2 weeks later it was slightly damaged in an air attack. U-449 had been spotted by a British B-24, which was part of the air cover for the convoy ONS-10. During the action, members of U-449's crew were injured, and Commander Otto requested medical assistance. Presumably one of those injured was Baumhard. The U-boat command ordered Otto to break off its patrol and rendezvous with either U-592 or U-119, both of which had doctors on board. U-449 first met U-119, which was returning to France from a mining operation near the Canadian coast. The doctor from U-119 boarded the U-449. While approaching the Kriegsmarine bases in northern France, the two submarines were tracked down in the Bay of Biscay by a hunter-killer group of the Royal Navy, probably thanks to the cracking of the German naval codes. On the 24th of June 1943, U-449 was sunk about 190 nautical miles, 355 kilometres, northwest of Cape Ortegal by depth charges from the British sloops Wren, Woodpecker, Kite and Wild Goose under the command of Frederick John Walker at position 45 degrees north, 11 degrees and 59 minutes west. All 49 crew members were killed, including Dr. Ernst Baumhard. Baumhard's former deputy Gunther Hennecke did not fare any better. He was killed along with 54 other U-boat men when U-538 was sunk in the North Atlantic southwest of Ireland on the 21st of November 1943. An investigation by the Frankfurt-on-Main Public Prosecutor's Office regarding the activities of Ernst Baumhard and Gunther Hennecke in Grafeneck and Hadamar was discontinued in August 1946 with the note "presumed deceased" for both of them. I hope you found this interesting. I'm now uploading every day. I do longer videos like this on Friday, so every Friday at 2000 hours my time. On other days I do shorter videos, such as video maybe 1 to 3 minutes in length, a shorts video, or on Tuesdays I do a slightly longer one, usually one of me walking around at a historical location. If you're interested in this sort of thing, then you'll probably want to subscribe. The Holocaust is my specialist area, but obviously I've also done a lot on things related to the T4 murder campaign as well as Nazi Germany in general. So for the moment, thanks for listening and all the best from me.